What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. Today we have a topic that sometimes makes my blood boil, but it's something that every CEO out there really needs to know about sales. The buyer behavior has changed. I know you've heard that before. You're not hearing it from me for the first time. But what are we doing from our side? The buyer behavior has changed, but we're still using the same playbooks we've used 10 years ago. We're still doing the same things. We're still trying to generate leads the same way. We all know it's not working. We're still doing it anyway. We're having our meetings with our groups of buyers and trying to do the old BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing meeting. And no one wants to sit through that. So what should we be doing and how should we be doing? Well, thank goodness I have my very good friend, Brent Adamson, with me today and his partner, Karl Schmidt, to lay it all out for us and give you the real, like, what to do now. They have authored a brand new book, which I am so excited to share with everyone. You've probably seen it on my LinkedIn post. It's called the FrameMaking Sale. So we are going to talk about what is frame making, what's different about these buyers, and how do we get here and how do we get out of here to the right place. So welcome to the show, Brent and Karl.
Alice, great to be with you as always. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm delighted. As you know, I'm a big fan. And love this topic.
Likewise. Yeah.
Thank you. But before we start, I just kind of want to, rewind a little bit. Like, you guys have been studying this stuff for a long time. For those of you out there listening who don't know, they were both with CEB, which produced a lot of great research and the Challenger Sale. And then Brent was also with Gartner for a while. You can read all of this in their bios. These two have done amazing, tremendous things. But the thing I love most about both of them is they are such great thinkers. When I say thought leader, like, I really think about these two guys because, oh my gosh, like, they take real information from research and anecdotal and what they're seeing out there, and they synthesize it and put something back out. So thank you both for really, being good thinkers in our space. And let's talk about how we got here. So, like, Brent, I just have to ask, did you grow up researching things? What you did?
I grew up sad, lonely, and alone. But other than that, that's a different podcast, so we can do that some other time. But okay. Sorry, that got dark. But my entire professional career, actually, I've been a researcher really the entire 35 years or whatever long. So, Alice, as you know, I think I'm a trained academic. So my background, it was because I was going to be a college professor. In fact, I was a college professor, and my PhD is in linguistics and German and foreign language education of all things. Got halfway to tenure and realized, oh, wait, you can't actually make money doing this. It took me 15 years to figure that out.
Right.
Went and got an MBA and came out of business school and got recruited by CEB back in, believe it or not, 2003. Man, that's a long time ago. And it just so happened that the position that was open when I applied was in the sales practice. It could have been anywhere, but it happened to be in sales. So since that time, all of that those research chops that I've developed, I suppose, and teaching capabilities have all been deployed against B2B sales marketing. But yeah, the whole career is all about going after really hard, tough problems that we find really intriguing and interesting, and finding ways to think about them no one's thought about before. Wrapping them in research and then putting it in the form of a really compelling story and sharing it with the world.
I love that. And you do, in fact, put it in the form of a really compelling story so that people can digest it. And that is what I think that is so intriguing to me, how you do that. But let me just ask you, because I find it interesting. So you knew nothing about sales. You were linguistics and German or some crazy, like, what? And how are you going to make money? Which I get, because when I was in school, I was an art major, and one day I woke up and went, how am I going to make money doing this?
Yeah, right? You get it. Yeah, you totally get it.
I totally get it. But then I'm like, so they put you in sales. Like, what were you thinking? Like, I don't know anything about sales. Like, what do you want me to do here?
Well, it's exactly what I was thinking. In fact, and we unpacked that, not so much in my personal story because no one really cares, but in terms of like a technique that I use to survive is the foundation of chapter 7 in the book. Because what happened was, like, one day, quite literally one day, I was grading, final exams at Michigan State for my students. And the next day I was talking to chief sales officers about their key account program. And there's a longer story of how you do that, but it was, well, let's come back to that and tell you what the technique I used to survive in that context maybe a little later.
And
but yeah, it was wild. It was
I
really
mean, I
weird.
can't even imagine, because like I was a
Yeah.
teacher before I went into sales.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like I wasn't even thinking, oh, sales is a career, so I can imagine that you being thrown into that. But Karl, like, so what did it start for you? Were you a kid researcher? Like,
No, actually, I was. Well, I should admit that I was. I went to University of Chicago and I got a degree in mathematics, so I guess I was always kind of on that end of the spectrum of things.
okay, I'm just going to say a little nerdy, but okay.
More than a little. Yeah, my main hobby is chess, so let's just put that on the table.
Okay.
But a lot of my career was spent in consulting, and so what I found so attractive about CEB is where I'd previously been.
Mathematics, and how did you get into consulting? Don't skip that part.
That there's no smooth transition there. There's I got my degree, decided I didn't want to go to grad school and become a PhD in academic like my parents, and got recruited into the classic strategy consulting world. So I went to Deloitte out of undergrad, and then a few years later, after spending some time in doing finance and IT stuff, I then got my MBA and then went to BCG. So I kind of did the strategy consulting cycle. But what I so enjoyed about those projects is we'd go in for a particular client, CEO, CMO, whoever it might have been, and then have 6 to 8 weeks and solve their go after whatever the hardest question they were struggling with. CB kind of did that, but did it at scale. And so instead of trying to find that one question for that one company, for that one product, we were trying to take for all heads of sales or all heads of marketing, what's the biggest thing they're struggling with? And instead of having a team that got after it for 6 or 8 weeks, we would then have a much bigger team and have the luxury of going after it for 6 or 8 months. And so we'd really be able to go out and interview the customer, whoever the audience was, whoever that was being influenced by that, to really understand what was really going on. And that was, it just took all the things I loved about consulting, but allowed us to take it to a whole another level of figuring out what the truth really was. So, and that's why we wrote the book. So,
how did you get into the sales end of the research, or the buyer end of the research? That whole.
Yeah, what's fascinating is when I was first being recruited into CEB, my background was I was kind of on a CIO track at one of the biggest banks in the world. And so I'm reporting to the CIO of the Americas, and realizing I do not want to be a CIO when I grow up. And so that was part of my motivation to go back and get my MBA. And coming out of that, ended up being connected to some folks at CEB. And so I thought, all right, finance, IT technology. And I met someone there, Hanya Lin, who said, Karl, what I really can see you do is leading our marketing practice. And I'm like, but he convinced me. And part of the theory for so many of us, and like Brent's story is the same, CB didn't recruit for people who already had experience and background in the field, because they wanted us testing the conventional wisdom, not just, again, so they didn't want us to have to unlearn things that we had done by experience. They wanted to come out with a very new and often confrontational perspective to be disruptive.
Often confrontational. Oh, Dad just described Brent.
That's it. It kind of fills in the gaps, doesn't it, in some ways?
Doesn't it? I'm serious, right?
You joke. I think you guys are joking. Maybe not. I mean, I am from Nebraska, which is over here, right? So we're pretty humble, nice people, I'd like to think. But more than a 20, 30, 40-year career of research, Alice, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, gets me excited, is to ask the questions no one asking, or to answer it in a way that no one's thought of. I'm always interested in if you tell me the sky's blue, I will actually argue the opposite point, say it's every color but blue, not because I want to be right or because I want to win, but because I want to learn. Because I think that's where knowledge is constructed. It's constructed between these polar opposites, what we know and what we don't know, or what your position is in mine. Somewhere between those is a better answer, right? And so this idea of reframe, Challenger in a lot of ways is autobiographical, and we carry that right into frame making as well, as sort of how we think about going after these problems. But everything we've done for the last 20 years, Karl and I and a lot of others, was based on this concept of, what are we missing? What's the question we should be asking or not? What's the weird angle on the answer that no one's thought of before? And that's really what frame making is all about, is trying to understand customer buying today from a completely different perspective than anyone's really thought about it before.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And I think all the CEOs out there that are listening and all those who support those CEOs, we should be asking harder questions, right? We
Yeah.
of our own team about how we are addressing our customer, how we're meeting them, how we're treating them, how every touch point is happening, and what do they need and what have we not thought of. I think we spend so much time introspectively, like on ourselves and what we do and how we do it, but not thinking how that impacts the customer. And this is why companies are complaining today about sales and their salespeople and their sales leaders and all these other things. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of companies out there that aren't hitting their goals because
Yeah.
of all of these things, right?
100%. Well, and in your world too, particularly in the founder-led world, there, a lot of CEOs are asking, why can't they just all sell like me, right? So that's
Right.
the on
Exactly.
top of everything else. Yeah,
Exactly. Well, so let's talk about frame making
yeah,
because I think it's so important to leave everybody here with like, okay, so what are we supposed to be doing today? But I do want to kind of stand on my box a little bit and shout because um, it's not new, right? Like what we're going to talk about and tell you to do, it should not be like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that before, right?
yeah.
These are not
Well,
brand new ideas. These are founded in humanity. Like,
Yeah.
how do people connect with people? How do we help each other? How do we be human in this world of sales? And this should not be new information for anybody out there. It should sound like, yeah, that's what we want to do. That's the way it should be, right? But it is a far cry from what many of you are doing now. And specifically, if you are still doing BANT discovery calls, BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing.
time.
We got to
Yeah.
stop that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Karl, help me here.
Yeah, the thing that's fascinating is when one of the very first studies I was involved with in CB, we were studying this aspect of, so many people at the time were talking about, business value versus personal value, and arguing that B2B purchase is all purely rational. It's all a case of, the ROI calculator. You're demonstrating value. It's all dollar and cents. And so we tested that, and we actually found that if you look at using this methodology on psychological connection, the typical customer of a B2B client, again, that type of relationship, the psychological connection between that buyer and that brand is far stronger than anything on the B2C side. Think about the biggest Apple lover, the biggest Tesla supporter, whoever it might be. If you are someone that has staked your career to some enormous B2B purchase that's going to define the trajectory for your company, that has a much bigger influence on you as an individual, not just because of what you're counting on in terms of the professional success within the company, but your identity value, how you actually see yourself. And so that's where, to your point, it's all about our human psychology. It's about the neuroscience of how we're wired, and how we see ourselves is so defined by these types of decisions in a way that, again, 10 years ago, very few people were talking about, but of course it's obvious. We're all humans, whether we're, buying a watermelon at the grocery store or buying a multi-billion-dollar AI implementation.
Yeah,
It all ends up playing out the same way.
exactly. We can just never forget that buying is emotional. A
Exactly.
human has to make a decision and is going to go through an emotional, their psychological process, right? That
Yep.
gets them to that decision point is going to be emotional because in all of these choices that I have, how are they going to impact me
Yes.
personally, right, Brent? I
Yeah.
mean, they're thinking through it and
Yeah.
going, this is going to impact me.
Maybe we should back up a little bit and just kind of get on the table, sort of the premise, the underlying premise of frame making
Yes,
and the frame making sale. But
yes.
I tend to be, I tend in your question, Alice, to run a little deeper, maybe even darker, frankly, because I think it's not just that we've lost our way in sales, because because what you're saying, I totally get, and I'm with you, and you're absolutely right. The book is about human connection. And to your point, it's like, yeah, but how did we lose the thread that sales is about human connection? I
Right.
think we lost the thread on humans are about human connection. I mean, we have to just look around us, and that's not
Yeah.
tongue in cheek. I mean, I think that's like, in some ways, this book has this really interesting reverse psychology to it, which is you think it's a book about sales until you get to the end of the chapter and realize, oh no, this is a book about all of us right now in the world we live in every single day. But But the heart and soul of this book is a bar chart. And it's a bar chart we generated originally, or at least a version of the bar, there's based on some data that we generated while we were at CB Gartner, trying to understand what are the factors that ultimately lead to increased likelihood of customers buying what we call a high quality, low regret purchase. So that is, they don't settle for status quo. They don't settle for the small deal. They buy the bigger solution with the broader scope, the higher price point. And like a unicorn, it's like, weirdly, they feel good about it at the same time. Usually when you buy something big like that, it comes with a certain amount of buyer's remorse. So we were looking for the unicorn, high quality, low regret. And the short version, there's a long version, and Karl's heard it 1,000 times. Sorry, Karl, but the shorter version is we ran everything we could possibly think of through this model, this research engine, trying to figure out what drives up the likelihood of a high quality, low regret deal, and sales techniques, challenger techniques, marketing strategies, content material, customer buying group configurations, you name it. And the single thing that popped more than anything else, I mean, so if everything else came out as either no impact or maybe a small impact or even a decent impact, there was one thing that came out like up here, like completely off the charts higher than anything else. And that was the degree to which customers report a high level of confidence in the decision that they're making on behalf of their company. So we call this decision confidence. And what it's really told us, and what we've known for a while, and I've been telling CEOs for the longest time, is we need to run everything through the lens of customer confidence. What are we doing in terms of our engagements, in terms of our sales techniques, in terms of our content, to help customers feel more confident that they're making the right choice on behalf of their company? Here's
Okay,
where it
I'm
takes.
just going to pause you for 1
Yeah,
second.
because this is where it takes a left turn, and we should talk about. But go ahead, please.
Yeah,
Sorry.
soak it in, right?
Yeah.
How many of you out there are looking at the sale through the lens of buyer confidence? I'm going to say very few of you probably. But if you really pause and think about it, why are your deals ending in no decision or just dragging on and on and on? It's because someone can't make a decision, or a group together cannot come to consensus and make a decision because they don't have any confidence in their decision making something better than it is now at their company. They're like, why would I spend all that money? I don't feel confident this is going to really work or change or whatever it's supposed to do.
And
Anyway,
notice, Alice, what's interesting about confidence is it's to your point and Karl's point, it's an emotion. It's not something you know, but it's something that you feel. And so we're also focused in sales on trying to get our customers to know something, know about our product, know about our features, know about our value.
know the value.
Right? No, it's absolutely know about our ROI and the long-term cost implications, know about all the other customers that love it already, right? That we don't really focus on what if the single biggest driver of sales and of growth, your engine of growth, is not something that customers know. It's something that they feel. Right? But here's where it takes this weird left turn, because when we present these ideas, the first reaction out of the gates is for those who we get a lot of what we call false positive. I call this the false positive problem, which is like, oh no, Brent, we totally agree. We're all over this. We're focused on customers' confidence. That's why we want to make sure our customers are confident in our people, confident in our product, confident in our value, confident in us as a thought leader, confident in us as trusted advisors. And that's where we always have to kind of hit the brakes, say, well, I hear you. I don't disagree with you, but that's actually not what the data says. Because when you unpack this data point that shows this massive implication or massive upside benefit from customers feeling confident, it turns out it has nothing to do with suppliers at all. It's customers' confidence in things like, how confident are we that we even ask the right questions in the first place? How confident are we that we've done enough research, that we've looked at enough alternatives or the right alternatives, all of which is really, really hard in today's world. And so this is why Karl and I literally dropped everything. I quit my job and we decided we're going to write a book and put it in the world, because there's the single biggest driver of customer growth is the thing we're all walking past, because it turns out the thing we need to solve for is not customers' confidence in us, but customers' confidence in themselves. And the book is really this exploration of, what does it mean? What does that even look like? What does it mean to be a seller, a salesperson, a sales team, a go-to-market team that is specifically designed to go to market in such a way that we're focused on customers' self-perception and not just their supplier perception? And how do we do that? And that's what FrameMaking is essentially, is our answer to that question.
Yeah, and that is so powerful. And as I look out there and working with my clients and seeing other people and talking to sellers and sales leaders all the time, and, go-to-market professionals in general, including marketing, right?
Yeah.
They're not thinking about that. They're training their salespeople to provide confidence in the company, in the service, in the salesperson themselves, which, like you said, not disagreeing with that, not that those are bad things, but it's not the thing. It is not the thing, right, Karl? Because if
Yeah.
you think to yourself, okay, what is that customer thinking about their own ability to make a decision or bring this team together to make the best decision? And we're not training salespeople to think like that. We're not even mentioning it in the most case, right? So sellers are just still out there doing what they had been doing. But
Yeah.
the buyers, Karl, are sitting there going, yeah, that now I'm even more overwhelmed that I didn't need to know that.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, and it comes back to something you mentioned earlier, which is as we think about this again, this is all based on neuroscience, so it's how we're wired as humans, right? Which isn't new. It's just sometimes our understanding of it evolves. But of the things that we would quickly jump to if we're trying to help someone's decision confidence, it's like, oh well, we just need to make it easier for the customer, and who hasn't had an initiative at their organization. We just make it easier for the customer centricity, make it. But so much of that is all again very supplier centric, right? We want to make it easy for them to buy from us, right? Not necessarily how do we make it easier for them to make a decision. And that's one of the two major drivers of decision confidence if you look at the academic lit around the neuroscience of decision confidence. But it's the other one that is largely ignored and is something that, again, we just don't see sales organizations or commercial leaders thinking about enough. And that's the importance of agency. Because if we don't feel like we can make the decision, and again, this gets into the whole consensus buying dynamic we were just talking about, if we don't feel like we have the control and the ability to actually take this decision, either individually or as part of a collective group, then our decision confidence just can't be sufficient. And so that's where it isn't just about making it easier for the person to make the decision. We have to support both their ease and their agency simultaneously. And it's that combination that, again, it says, oh, of course, if I don't feel like I can make the decision, how can I be confident in it? It seems so obvious when you think about it. But again, no one's really getting after this. And that's so much of what we're trying to help through,
Yeah, but
through the
now,
book and
Karl,
through the workshops.
we have to teach psychology to our salespeople, and now we have to teach
We do.
them how to help people have agency. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
counselors, they're salespeople. But let me take this back and reframe it in a way that I can really understand, and those who know Miller Hyman, which I know you two do, can understand as well. It's like we in the Miller Hyman methodologies, we always talk about understanding the customer's concept, right? What is in their concept? It's all of the things that are in their mind or minds, because there's multiple buying influences. So you have to think about each one's concept and what they're thinking and how that impacts each individual person, right? What they're thinking about it, their emotions, and all of that. So we've always talked about that in conceptual selling. And then in strategic selling, where we're taking all this information to position ourselves better, one of the concepts we always thought about was win results. And it was always such a hard concept for everyone to get when I was teaching those programs. And still today, when I work with my clients who have been trained in Miller Hyman and we talk about win results, but Bob and Steve were always adamant, you've got to know the win results or you're not going to progress. Well, what does that mean? Well, what is the business result they're looking for? Sometimes we can get to that, but like I think you said earlier, Karl, they don't even know what problem they're trying to solve. Brent said, have they even asked the right questions to know if it's the right problem? Like the problem is, oh, we need a CRM. Well, is that really the problem? Like, is a CRM going to solve our problem? We better, because you know how companies are. They go and buy a CRM without even having a sales process in place. So they are solving the wrong problem, right? Okay, so let's just say, right, we can get the business result out of them and we all figure out together what they actually really need. But then what's the personal win, right? And if we don't get down to that, that's the psychology part. That's do I have confidence in this solution, or that we ask the right questions, or that we can bring this group to consensus, or all the many, many things. They have to be able to win in order to do that. And if they don't even understand for themselves what impact it's going to have, how on earth are we going to do it?
Alice, there's a way to make this super practical, and we're kind of talking conceptually because we all geek out on the conceptual level.
Right,
I'll speak for myself, right? But so in the book we try.
So what do we do, right?
In the book we try to make it super, super practical. So first of all so maybe even you feel, I'm sure your listeners probably do at this point, this feels like this big amorphous problem, right? Like how do we even like I think I kind of maybe follow these guys, but what are we even talking about? What do we do about it? So just to begin to show you just how frame making works, we can actually apply it at a meta level to the very thing we're discussing right now, which is to say we can apply frame making to the concept of frame making. So if customers are overwhelmed and we need to build their self-confidence, one of the first things we want to do is just understand, how are they overwhelmed right now? What does that even mean? Because it's hard to come up with a solution unless we can sort of put brass tacks around the problem. So one of the things we do in the book is we lay out across a series of chapters the 4 challenges. I mean, there's probably more, and there could be more. We could debate them, but we think if you're going to put a bet on something, there's 4 very specific, very frankly tough challenges that customers face when it comes to self-confidence right now. And one is decision complexity. Like literally, just how do I navigate this decision through my organization? Who do I need to get involved? When do I need to get involved? What landmines am I going to run to? It's just, I don't, it's like you just get so frustrated. There's decision complexity. There's information overload, which is particularly in a world where we're all trying to be thought leaders and marketers are pumping out huge amounts of data at scale. And now we've got AI on top of it. There's no end of content that I can consume to try to make myself smarter. And at some point,
Oh my gosh, that is the
completely
truth,
confused,
right? That is,
right?
it's just too much.
And then there's where you were just a minute ago, which is objective misalignment, which is
Mhm.
do you ever get, I know you have, so this, I don't even have to ask you, but we've all had that sales call where the customer says, if it were just up to me, I'd buy this tomorrow. It's like, oh God, I hate it. Like, I get shivers in my spine when I hear it, because it's like PTSD, but it isn't just up to them, right? So one of the things that customers are like, I have total confidence in you. I have total confidence in your value. I have total confidence in your ability to execute. I have total confidence that you're better than the competition. I just don't have confidence that I'm going to go to my boss and she's going to agree that this is even a problem we're solving in the first place. So it doesn't matter that you're the best solution in the world, right? So that's, how do I get them aligned to feel confident that they're going after the same thing, such that my value is not just an abstract reality, but is important and valuable in context. And then the final one is really interesting, is outcome uncertainty, which is, this is that customer says, no, I believe you when you show me all your raving fans. You've had amazing results at other companies. I just don't believe we'll get it here. Not because I don't doubt you, but I doubt me, because we'll screw it up, because we screw up everything, because we're the most dysfunctional
Right.
company
My
in the world.
ability to get everybody on board, my ability or our
100%,
ability as a team to
right?
get engagement, our ability to actually get everyone to do the parts they need to do to make it all work.
Agreed. So once you do this, once you start mapping these very specific concrete challenges to customers' confidence, so again, decision complexity, information overload, objective misalignment, outcome uncertainty, then you can ask for each one of them, how would I take that thing that feels big and amorphous and overwhelming, much like frame making, earlier in the conversation, hopefully a little less so now. How do I just narrow it down and say, okay, of this big challenge, decision complexity, like there's lots of steps. It's this big spaghetti bowl graphic that we use in the book as well. But what are the 3 steps that matter most? What are the 2 things I'm most likely to overlook? So these are concepts, to your point, that have been around forever. We call them, they're called, I guess is a better way to say it, prompting and bounding. So I can prompt you to think of maybe a couple obstacles you hadn't thought of, and bound it, say it's not the 50 things you got to worry about, but really you want to probably focus on these 3 or 4, and one of them you've never thought of before. That's what that begins to sound a little bit more like a frame making conversation, with one big caveat about expertise, which we can park and talk about in a minute. But the whole idea here is, for any one of those challenges, how do I become my customer's coach, their guide, their Sherpa? How do I essentially, based on what I know about how things can go wrong, based on what I've learned from other companies, share with them stories that will help them see how other companies like them have overcome those challenges, or maybe fallen into a challenge and couldn't get out, and so it becomes a cautionary tale. So my role as a frame making seller is to help you feel like, oh man, I would have totally made that mistake, or wow, this was overwhelming, but I've talked to you, feel like I got a better sense for how I'm going to focus. To Karl's point, it's still, the agency stays with you, the customer, because it's not confidence in me that I got to solve for, it's confidence in you. So real quick, and it's a bandwagon now. I know I'm talking, it's like banging on, but real quick, it was such a great metaphor. I was talking to Charlie Green about 2 weeks ago. Some will know Charlie Green is the author, one of the co-authors of Trusted Advisor, and he's a great guy, by the way. And when I was kind of going through these concepts with him and talking about what we're finding, he says, Brent, it's exactly what you said a second ago, Alice. It kind of sounds like a good therapy session. He says, you think about a good therapist engaged in a therapy session, the therapist is never going to tell her patient what to do. The therapist is going to create a construct or a model or a view of the world that feels much more manageable, such that the patient can come to their own conclusions of what they're going to do for themselves. To your point about this not being new, that's not new. But this is what we're talking about. This is a very human approach to sales and marketing, is how do we engage customers in a very human way such that we can help them feel more confident and make those decisions on their own? that don't feel so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, my training in sales, and I was a public school teacher before I got into business with my
Yeah.
dad, right? So, just thinking about uh, teaching is a helping profession, right? And so I
Yep.
came from there. So my dad and Bob always had that notion that sales is a helping profession.
Yeah.
And if we're helping, then we get in a position where we can solve, right? So we're guiding them, like you said, being the Sherpa, asking good questions, laying things out with them so we can compare and contrast, and then helping them make the best decision possible, which doesn't always include me, my
Yeah.
products, my solutions, right?
Yep.
But that's where I think it's a little scary for CEOs to think about, wow, I'm going to let my salespeople, I'm going to train my salespeople, first of all, because they don't know how to do this, by the way. I mean, there are some, I have met some sellers who can do this, but they're few and far between. And they're not the young ones, no offense to anyone, but they are seasoned salespeople who have figured this out on their own or taken some of these trainings and learned how to do this advising role of selling, right? And so, thinking about the sellers right now and how they're approaching this, it's so far away from it. So I love what you're saying about break it down, right? And make it,
Yeah.
think about it in these 4 pieces. Which one can you impact? And so, I'm thinking as a CEO, all right, Karl, how do I start making this shift at my company? What are the steps I need to take?
Yeah, I would say the first one, we're working with a number of early adopter companies right now, and the thing that is the jumping off point for everything we're talking about is this, what we describe as the frame making mindset. And this is where really it's a different way to think about the role of sales. And it starts with this idea that our role in sales, and this was provided to us by, let Brent provide some more of the details about Brian, but just this brilliant insight into what we need to do as sellers is help customers make the best decision they can in as little time as possible.
Right?
And
Hallelujah. I mean,
yeah,
stop. Say that again, because that is the message.
yeah, it's and we're repeated verbatim because we debated these words. I can't tell you how much time Brett and I spent debating exactly what these words should be, but the role for sales is to help customers make the best decision they can in as little time as possible.
Yes.
And that's just such the core. And we can get into the little time as possible why that's so important. But that first aspect of make the best decision they can, so much of that comes directly from the CEO. Right? Because if the CEO says, hey, I want my sellers to be trying to beat down every door, break through every wall, never take no as an answer, what that's missing is, well, what about those doors that are closed because you really aren't the best fit for them? Maybe not now, maybe you will be some point in the future, maybe they're not ready, whatever the reason might be. But if you're not arming your sellers with helping to figure out who are the right customers, so it's not just BANT that you're qualifying based on, but you're really trying to figure out what should be the basis for that decision and what really is the best answer for that customer. If you're not giving your sellers that guidance, well, then they have no hope of, again, they're going to end up in BANT land, right? It's just almost inevitable. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like it's that permission to guide the buyer to the best decision, that it's like CEOs, you got to give that permission to your sellers. You've got
Yes.
to help them
Totally.
be the helpers, not the sell it at all costs, discount it if that's what it takes, do, dramatic measures, right? Because the thing I've always found, and I've been doing this even longer than Brent, believe it or not. I know that's very hard to believe
yeah,
because I
no
know.
one's as old as Brent. That's not
All right.
possible. Yeah.
But in every case of when I was selling, or in all the years that I've been helping my customers with these highly complex, large deals, in every case where we left gracefully saying, this is not the right fit for you, maybe we can help you meet the right, people, or do, but we are not the right choice for you. These people are forever grateful, so much so that they
Yep.
send you business. And when they move to another company and they can use what you sell, they're the first ones to call you. I mean, it's crazy how much goodness comes from letting someone know they shouldn't buy your product.
On that point, Alice, I think in so many ways we have the order of operations wrong in sales, and all with very good intentions, which is, and we've already heard this. I hear what you're saying, guys, but we can't do that until we win the customer's trust. We have to win the right to have those kinds of
Right.
conversations, And we would hopefully very diplomatically and respectfully argue the best way to win your customers' trust is by engaging them in this manner such that the trust in you becomes a byproduct. It's not the thing that you win, thus you know what I'm saying? So if I can,
Yeah,
if I
don't
can
go
be
in starting with, oh, you need to trust me, so I'm going to tell you these things,
right,
so you would trust me.
100%. In fact, what we know from our data is that when you show up with that sort of posture of trust me, I've been doing this for 30 years. Let me tell you what you need to do. We know from our research that actually does damage to customers' confidence. And as a result, damage to your likelihood of winning a high quality, low regret deal. Because what you're doing when you show up trying to be the expert is you're actually solving for their confidence in you, not their confidence in themselves. And so if you really, yeah, but I need them to trust me. It's like, I guess I put it like this. Maybe it's a kind of good way to kind of sum up the whole thing and put it together. And there's a reason why we put this in the last chapter, not the first, because I think when people hear this, they either love it. I don't know that anyone hates it, but they think like it's either I love it or you're on Mars. But but the way I like to think about it is something very personal, which is if you think about the people in your own life that you care about, that you really truly love, a parent, a spouse, a child, a friend, someone that when you think of them, you really sort of light up on the inside. And hopefully we all have at least one of those people in our lives somewhere on our journey. And what's always been interesting to me, Alice, when you think about those relationships that make you sort of smile on the inside, there's a very good chance when you think of that person, you think to yourself, I love you not just because I love you, but I love you because I love me when I'm around you. And if you have one of those people in your life, that is incredibly meaningful and you hold on to that forever because it's such a special feeling, right? And all we're really asking, and if this seems weird or crass or strange connection, it's your very point from the beginning of our conversation about at the end, at the center of this entire story is not a story of selling. It's not a selling story or a buying story. It's a human story. Because the question we're really asking is, how can you be that kind of person to one of your customers? How can you show up and engage customers in such a way that as a result of that sales interaction, the customer feels just a little bit better about themselves? And if you can be that person, if you can have that kind of interaction, we think the trust in you, to your point, is going to come back to you in dramatically. And ultimately it's also, and we wouldn't say this is because it feels good or it feels nice. We have bar charts to show that is the single shortest path to growth for your company. So it's not, it's like we got scoreboard. You know what I mean? We've got the data to back it up. And that's where I think, I often tell people, I don't know that I've ever seen a time in my decades of doing this where doing what's right for selling and doing what's right for humanity have been better aligned than they are right now. And for me, I find that a story of optimism and hope, honestly, because it's like, this is how we can all show up in the world professionally, frankly, and personally to help people feel better about themselves and ultimately win more as a result.
Oh my gosh. I like leave it there because that's so beautifully said. CEOs, how do you get your salespeople to be those people? That's the question you have to answer,
Yeah.
right? And because we are out of time, you're going to have to read the book to find out or get a hold of one of us and we'll tell you. But
Absolutely.
Karl, Brent, amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with me today on Sales Talk for CEOs. I know everyone's going to get a lot out of this. I can't recommend enough. Buy the FrameMaking Sale, read it, and then do book club with the whole entire sales team. And then I hear through a little birdie told me that Brent and Karl are actually even offering some sales training in this frame making, which might be something your company would be interested in.
100%. Yeah.
So I know we all have to go, but real quick, if you want to get a hold of Brent or Karl, do you prefer them to go to a website or would you prefer them to go to your LinkedIn?
Alice, I've joked with you. It's like I feel like I live in LinkedIn now. I sleep there, right? But
You do. It's true.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we won't talk about that
Carl,
now.
not so much. He's playing chess, I think. But Carl's actually building the business while I'm screwing around in social selling.
So here's the rule, though. If you now, I know that LinkedIn has limited your ability to send messages to people, but if you can send a message, let Karl or Brent know that you heard them here on my show, of course. But what would be really great is if you comment on one of their posts and they see you there, then they'll know, oh yeah, that's Alice's friend who wants to connect with me, one of Alice's 100%. Listeners, and then they'll know.
And by the way, the book is at theframemakingsale.com. So that's also an easy way to get a hold of us. So that's just for now. I think the two easiest, framemakingsale.com or theframemakingsale.com. They both go to the same place, or find us on LinkedIn. And we'd love to talk to anyone and everyone about this. We think it's that important.
Oh, I so totally agree. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.